Welcome everyone. We hope you're comfortable in your living rooms and are ready for this year's PCC Rise Final 2021.
My name is Hasse, and this is Emilie, and together with the steering committee of Polit Case Competition.
Today we stream from the City Hall of Copenhagen, and under normal circumstances we'd have invited you all to join us for a great celebration. But the current restrictions does not allow for that, so we're happy that you've chosen to tune in from your homes.
Last Sunday, we launched the first ever PCC Rise case. A total of 39 participating teams worked hard for 6 hours to solve the case. And last Monday, the City of Copenhagen had to cut 39 to 9 teams. Earlier today, the semi-finalists presented their solution in front of semi-finalist juries. They've taken question on their solutions, defended their analysis, and argued for their recommendation. 3 of these teams have been selected to present their solution once more, in front of a new jury and in front of you people joining us from home. They'll have to deliver convincing arguments and sound analyses in order to be crowned the winner of PCC Rise.
We'll disclose the finalists in a bit, but before we begin, we'll just quickly go through the program for this evening. In a short while, we'll give the word to Chief Economist Thomas Ranekær from the City of Copenhagen, who would also like to welcome you. Afterwards, our case writers Anna, Aske, and Sophie are ready to present this year's PCC Rise case and go into depth with what was expected from our participating teams, as well as present this year's judges for the PCC Rise final.
And then the moment we're all waiting for, the final will kick off. Each team will present their solution for 15 minutes, and then they'll take question for 5 minutes. The jury will then review all 3 presentations, while Kasper and Andreas from BCG will hand out the award for best team name. Lastly, Thomas will announce this year's PCC Rise winners.
We would also like to just spend a few moments to say thank you to all of our supporting funds and sponsors. Our events would not be the same without them. And also a big thank you to all of our partners. The insights and knowledge that each partner brings to the table is key to the success of PCC. Thank you for your insight and continuous trust with our organization.
Our trusted university alliances, Aarhus Symposium and Aarhus Case Competition, who help us reach the talented students in Aarhus. The University of Copenhagen, from where we run all our activities. The Confederation of Danish Industries, that has a wide industry perspective on the case material. And Boston Consulting Group, our knowledge partner with deep problem-solving expertise. Lastly, a special thanks to the City of Copenhagen for hosting us tonight and for being the first ever PCC Rise partner. We are thankful they've chosen to work with us in this challenging year.
However, it's not just us that makes up Polit Case Competition. PCC consists of 21 voluntary economic students of the University of Copenhagen. We'd like to say a big thank you to each and every one in PCC for all the hard work and dedication to this organization. We've all worked hard towards hosting these events, and we're beyond excited to see it all materialize in an evening like this. And now we'll give the word to you, Thomas.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the City Hall and an online version of this year's PCC Rise final. My name is Thomas, and I'm the Chief Economist of the City of Copenhagen, responsible for the economic development of the city. We're extremely happy to be able to host this final. Under normal circumstances, we would have loved to invite you into these historic buildings, but today we hope that you make you comfortable in your own homes to follow this final. We're happy that so many has decided to spend their Sunday to solve a case that is very important for our city. Congestion is a real problem. It's a problem for our citizens, it's a problem for our visitors, it's a problem for our businesses. At the same time, it's also very important for us to be able to have a good infrastructure and make sure that mobility is functioning. So we need to make sure that the infrastructure is still functioning while at the same time lowering the congestion. We received a lot of very good solutions. We've been through them all, and we've decided to first cut it down to 9, and now with the semifinals cut it down to 3. And we'll be looking very much forward to actually seeing these 3 presentation and to see the final. And now I'll give the word to the PCC case writers.
Thank you, Thomas. We are the case writers of PCC 2021. And my name is Sophie, and this is Anna, and this is Aske. And the case centers around traffic in Copenhagen. So the city of Copenhagen strives to ensure the well-being of its inhabitants while at the same time protecting the environment. But heavy traffic in the city is a problem because it causes both congestion and it's a large source of air pollution and CO2 emissions, which makes it a nuisance to both the citizens and the visitors of Copenhagen. Therefore, the City Council has requested the finance administration to provide an analysis of a new potential tolling scheme. And the participants has been asked to assist the finance administration in assessing this new tolling scheme, which Anna would like to elaborate on.
The case the participants were asked to solve last Sunday consists of 3 overall questions. In the first question, the participants were asked to provide the City Council with the necessary background information by assessing and describing the current traffic flow within the city of Copenhagen. Question 2 builds on these findings, and here the participants were asked to examine the effect of a tolling scheme by reducing the number of cars. Finally, in question 3, takes a broader perspective, and the participants were asked to examine the socio-economic consequences of a tolling scheme. Here they also had the opportunity to discuss whether a tolling scheme is indeed the most efficient method to reduce congestion. Next, Aske would like to introduce the jury of this year's case competition.
The jury of case competition Rise Case 2021 consists of persons from all our partners. We have 2 judges from the city of Copenhagen. We have Thomas Tranekær, who is chief economist, and we have Peter Troels Nielsen, who is the head of the analytical division. Then we are happy to present the guy from BCG, very nice guy, and his name is Jon Munk Poulsen. And then we are happy to present Mogens Foskerau, who is professor of economics at the University of Copenhagen. And lastly, we are happy to present Claus Åstrup Seidelin, who is chief analyst at the Danish Confederation of Industry. And we are, of course, delightful that you guys want to spend our evening with us.
Yes, and that is all for us. Now we will turn to what this is all about, the final of PCC Rise 2021. So 3 teams has made it all the way to the final. And the first finalist is... It is Nikolaj Ober's team.
Hello, thank you. My name is Nikolaj. Alongside me I have Jacob, Eskil, and Jonathan. But let's get started.
Next slide.
Next slide. Yes,
Thank you.
so when considering the municipality of Copenhagen, it's evident that alone in the last 5 to 6 years, the people of Copenhagen has seen a shift in their traveling habits. Firstly, it's important to add that all our calculations are made using real numbers and thus including external effects from population growth and so forth. Nonetheless, the trend remains clear. The average distance traveled in a car per day has been declining for the last couple of years. This is noteworthy because at the same time, the total number of cars along with cars per inhabitant has been increasing. So if I can directly focus to the top blue circle, we have a small remark, which is this 22% drop in distance traveled in a car. This number originates from a calculation made for the years 2008 till 19. So by applying the relevant time span, which is from 2014 to 19, which is the time frame we look at here, this number would drop to approximately 10% decrease in distance traveled. But nonetheless, the conclusion remains the same. So these figures, we believe, strongly indicate that the traveling habits of the people in Copenhagen can be changed. The fact that no significant change in bike usage has been observed could stem from a lack of initiatives regarding bike traffic. However, this interpretation might change in the coming years when new and better bicycle paths are constructed. So in the light of this, we, as I said, strongly believe that the traveling habits can be changed if the right initiative is made. Next slide, please.
So now shifting our focus to the center of Copenhagen, we really wanted to view this analysis in the light of the current trends happening with the flow in and from the center of Copenhagen. Thus, we have conducted a forecast, both looking at vehicles and bikes. The forecast looking at bikes is aggressive, but reasonable in the short run. And it shows increase in bikes at almost 34% looking towards 2030. Obviously, we have vehicles where we'll see, according to our forecast, a drop of about 4% towards 2030. And of course, these drops are looking at an example where there's no fee zone. Explanation for this, these trends could be bikers saving time due to conjunctions and vehicles having to pay rising parking fees as they go into the center of Copenhagen. Next slide, please.
Yes, to further broaden our horizon, we have decided to compare our case in Copenhagen with the proposed tolling zone with Stockholm, Singapore, and Milan. Stockholm, Singapore, and London were a part of the case material, but we have further done our analysis to look at Milan, since the tolling scheme of Milan is a bit different and therefore relevant as well. We have found that by comparing Copenhagen to Stockholm, we would get the most precise estimates on the effects from a tolling zone. This is due to the demographics in Stockholm being similar to the demographics in Copenhagen. The real wage is comparable as well as the public transportation system already in place in Stockholm looks very much like the one based in Copenhagen, where the city center is highly connected with metros, trains, and buses. Therefore, we would expect that an introduction of a tolling scheme zone in Copenhagen would yield some of the same effects as in Stockholm. This is also due to public transportation in Stockholm being costing almost as much as it does in Copenhagen. Therefore, the difference in public transportation would be have some of the same results. To further get an understanding, we have done as a sensitivity calculation to further analyze our data set. Next slide, please.
As Jakob mentioned, we have based our analysis on a sensitivity analysis rather than looking at a specific forecast or prediction of the traffic impact and then going from there and out. This is due to our prediction of around 25% decrease in traffic being not so influenced by empirics. Therefore, we find it very important to look how the economic impact would be should the outcome be something different than our prediction. If we start to looking at the traffic impact, which is on the bottom of the slide, I will start by making you focus on the first line. And we see that at our prediction, there will be around 186,000 cars going in and out of the fee zone daily. It is to be mentioned that this number stems from a forecast that Jonathan presented, where we have around 250 vehicles daily in and out of the fee zone in 2021. Further, we looked into which of these cars would substitute their means of transportation to public transportation. This was done using two results from two reports that we identified. The first result being that around 77% of the cars or the vehicles in the fee zone consist of personal cars. And we thought that it would be these people who would substitute to to public transportation. The next result that we use is that around 35% of people who rarely or never uses the public transportation was found to be open to substitute, or that they would substitute to public transportation would it be made a cheaper alternative. Thus, we have around 27% of the cars that are removed from the traffic fee zone because of the tolling scheme, that around 27% of them would substitute into public transportation. This traffic impact then leads us to the economic impact that we calculated above. If we start by looking at the total economic impact that we have in the bottom row, we see that at our prediction of 25% traffic decrease, we have a surplus of around 0.275 billion per year. This is a result that is based on the direct income from the toll and the public transportation, but it is also a result that we achieve because we have a very high economic gain from the benefits due to less traffic, such as less congestion, less air pollution, etc. This economic gain from these socioeconomic variables are very important to the result of the analysis, and we see clearly that it is them that drives the numbers and make this a profitable tolling scheme. Next.
Yes, we've also plotted the socioeconomic impact into our into diagram, where we can see that when we reach about 21% reduction in car flow in and out of the city center, the socioeconomic impact would be positive. A 21% reduction would yield a reduction of about 38,000 cars traveling into the proposed toll zone every day. Due to the case being similar to Stockholm, we would expect that 21% isn't far off possible if the tolling zone is done as presented in the case material. Also, there's one notion that the data provided had a linear socio-economic impact, meaning that in our case, a city without any cars at all would be the social optimum. This doesn't seem quite realistic, as we would expect some reduction in the marginal product from the cars not coming into the city center. Also, as Eskil mentioned, the reason for the socioeconomic impact improving while the reduction of cars increases is that due to less vehicles in the city center, meaning less pollution, both air and noise pollution, less incidents, and also less congestion, meaning you can move faster through the city center.
Of course, numbers in this slide is not taking into account the natural trend, and the 21 reduction rate would be naturally hit in the year 2050 for vehicles in the center of Copenhagen. So taking that into account, as well as our sensitivity analysis, it's very possible that those two effects combined could lead to an even greater decrease in car traffic in and out of the center of Copenhagen.
Next
slide.
Then we went and looked further into how we could develop this tolling scheme. We started by looking at expanding the zone so that the limits of the zone would be around the municipality at the municipal border. We quickly came up with some argument as to why that was not a good idea, since the expansion of the zone would yield a higher cost and not as high income not as high an increase in income, because the density of traffic falls as you go out. Another argument is that a tolling zone that is around the municipality would act more as a tax for the surrounding municipalities coming into Copenhagen, as it would decrease the traffic within Copenhagen, because a lot of the traffic here is sometimes people just moving within Copenhagen. Thus, it would be perceived as a tax that is paid for by the surrounding municipalities, and it will come to the Copenhagen municipalities' benefit. Instead, we looked into how we could change this congestion tax based on what we want to achieve with it. The first model you see here is the variable tax based on time of day, and it's the one that we went through already. The next is the Milan model, where we tax the cars that pollute a lot, and then we let the cars, the low emission cars, run freely through the city. This doesn't have a great traffic impact, but it has a very great economic impact, as we saw in Milan, where the high polluting cars decreased by around 48.1% after 4 years. And the low emission cars that went freely through, they increased by almost 500% in 4 years. Thus, this model could help Copenhagen becoming CO2 neutral, which is the aim of 2025. Another way we looked at it was that we only tax personal cars. This is if we want to only reduce congestion, but try to limit the impact on the business life in Copenhagen and around it, such that traffic that was combined with businesses would run freely through the city, and the personal cars would get a tax on them. We saw earlier that a very high percentage of the traffic within this zone was personal cars. Thus, we deem it rather significant that if we tax these cars, the congestion could be limited. The final model you see here is a bit of add-on for all the other model. It would be a model where we use electronic road pricing, such as they do in Singapore, in a smart data-driven way with an AI behind that can constantly update the prices on the roads and work together with a smart map, such as Google Maps, to ensure a steady in and outflow of the city, such that we experience no congestions and it would be highly optimized. Yes.
Yeah. So as concluding remarks, we have come up with 2 recommendations of how to perceive this proposed fee zone. So first, if the government were to take a more green approach, we believe the way to go would be to implement a model much inspired by the one in Milan, where we tax the high polluting cars and let the less polluting cars walk through right through the city. This would, as Eskild mentioned, have a less economic impact, yielding potential lower gains and maybe also a deficit. But this would be a vital instrument in securing the CO2 neutrality of Copenhagen in the future. On the other hand, if the sole purpose of the tolling scheme is to reduce traffic congestion, we would suggest taxing only personal cars and letting work driving be unaffected by the tax. This is due to they have a so small part of the traffic flow in Copenhagen anyway. That's it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for your presentation. Now we will have 5 minutes for a short Q&A from the judges. And you are welcome just to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much, guys, for this great presentation. My name is Jon. I work at BCG, and this was pleasant to listen to, definitely. I have one question in terms of externalities and how they could potentially shift. So if cars are diverted, entering the ring, basically, will the externalities be moved to other places, and how would you factor that in terms of an economic model? Will the cars make a congestion elsewhere? What happens to public transport lines? What happens to other citizens being potentially affected by these changes? I don't assume that you have the answers to all of it, but maybe you can comment a little bit on how you see those externalities changing, and how you would, if you had more time, how you would factor that into the model.
Yes, so of course that is a relevant consideration, and we thought about it as well, that these cars have to go somewhere. Our idea was that the public transportation system could withstand an increase in demand. Furthermore, the infrastructure around the city is being developed and increased with the Nordhavnstunnel coming soon. We will also have a way out to Amager that isn't through the city, such that a lot of the cars that would normally run down along the water, they could go directly out to Amager and onto the highway as well. Furthermore, I think that it is realistic to incorporate a bit more social costs from this tax than we were provided with. So for example, maybe calculating an extra cost for externalities outside of Copenhagen or in the surrounding areas would be interesting as well.
Okay. I have a question as well. Thank you for the presentation. So I was thinking whether you have thought about the cost and benefits in the material that you received, whether that covers all the important costs and benefits that there are. So do you think there's something important missing?
We have taken into consideration that there could possibly be something that are not taken into account.
Well, a considerable thing would be actually that we thought hard about that the cost might be a bit overtuned, especially for the operating cost, annual operating cost. In Sweden, they have much lower operating cost. I think they had around 1.9 billion Swedish kronor for the first year, and then 200 million annually after that. Of course, that is a bit old numbers, so they have to be taken into account with inflation and such. Furthermore, I think there are some other externalities, of course, to be taken into account. For example, you could put up that people who are commuting to and from work would be hit a bit more because of this, because a lot of the traffic going into the center of Copenhagen would now go out to the large roads that are used as for commuters. So there might be some negative externalities on the business life, perhaps a bit around Copenhagen as well.
It seems like the cars are changing. Something is happening right now to the car market. You see more and more electrical cars. So if you imagine that there's sort of a trend in that, and that goes into the future, how would that affect the model that you're basing yourself on?
You can say that if you use the model and presented in Milan, then it would be a much greater incentive for people outside and people commuting into Copenhagen to get an electrical car or a less polluting car. This would further give Copenhagen the move towards being a CO2 neutral capital. So maybe implementing this tolling zone could further raise the sales of electrical cars.
Of course, there would be an economic backlash since these cars would go through Copenhagen for free. So taking that into account, the model would be less profitable, but more green in its political agenda.
Yes, thanks. That was 5 minutes. Thank you very much to the judges, and thank you to Nikolaj Oberst's team. And now Aske will present the second finalist.
Yes, and the second finalist is Vitas Disciple. So guys, please present your solution.
Hello, my name is Oliver.
My name is Nikolaj, and my name is Matthias. My name is Andreas.
And we are Vitas Disciple, and in the following we will be presenting our solution regarding the tolling scheme in the whole municipality of Copenhagen. And in the following, we are mainly focusing on the qualitative aspects of the case. So if you have any questions regarding data or how we did it, you're more than welcome to ask them afterwards.
Next slide, please. So the problem is traffic congestion. And we have over the last few years seen an increase in the traffic flow in the city of Copenhagen. And unfortunately, this creates excessive pollution and ultimately leads to a welfare loss. Therefore, we need to lower the car traffic in the city of Copenhagen. And we find that we can internalize these negative externalities caused by traffic congestion by introducing a tolling scheme, which will eventually lead to less CO2 emission, less congestion, and also likely fewer accidents involving vehicles and many other things.
So after considering various alternatives and we thought about different possible adjustments, we came to the conclusion that the implementation of a car type and time-based tolling scheme in not only the inner city of Copenhagen, but the whole municipality is the optimal solution. Next slide, please.
Okay. So we have a problem in the city of Copenhagen, and it's very simple. We basically have too many cars. And also the most common mean of transportation is also still cars.
It counts for 30% of the total traffic flow in the city of Copenhagen. And we need to get these numbers down. We need to get them down to 25%. That is the goal and aim from the city of Copenhagen. And we need to get it down below 25%, as too many cars have several negative externalities, such as traffic jams, noise pollution, air pollution, and less travel time reliability, and so on. And even these externalities have even greater cost with them. For instance, noise pollution causes stress among the citizens in the city. Air pollution means that more people will end up in hospitals, and less travel time reliability that means that we have a less efficient workforce. So we need to get the numbers down. However, if we actually look at the current trend in the inner city, it's actually looking pretty good. We can see light. We can see there's a tendency that there is an increasing number of bikes and daily passengers in public transportation, while we can see a decreasing tendency for cars in the inner city. And this trend has only been growing and growing the last couple of decades. So we could either try to support this ongoing trend, or we can try to look beyond the inner city and see if there's an even bigger problem at the municipal border of Copenhagen. Therefore, we will now look at the effect a tolling scheme will have on the inner city and on the municipal border. Next slide, please.
So at first glance, implementing a tolling scheme will cause a sudden drop in the traffic flow. The size of this drop depends on a number of different variables, such as the size of the fee, whether the fee is a variable fee or just a flat fee, and other things. So we compared Copenhagen to Stockholm due to the structural similarities between the two cities. And at first glance, it seems like one would think that the drop in traffic flow will be approximately 25%, similar to what they saw in Stockholm. With that being said,
we still think that Stockholm and Copenhagen have a difference. This happens due to a different fee happening on Copenhagen citizens and the people living in Stockholm. Stockholm has been having a range between 0 and 26 DKK, where we think that our fee of approximately 25 Danish kroner will have a bigger impact because of the higher price. This will also mean that we will have a bigger drop than 25% on the municipal of Copenhagen. And compared to our break even at 50%, it means that we will have a bigger welfare gain than the Stockholm citizens have had. This also has to do with our welfare gains. Even though we lose some of our taxation gains from the 25 kroners getting lost as less people use cars, we still will get further welfare gains, which will result in a greater city of Copenhagen. Next slide. So what happens if we extend the fee zone to the municipal border? As Matthias told, we have already seen that there has been a decrease in the traffic flow if we look at the inner city of Copenhagen. But if we look at the entire municipality of Copenhagen, there's actually been an increase in the traffic flow. So this indicates that there might be an even bigger problem in the entire municipality of Copenhagen rather than just in the inner city of Copenhagen. And therefore, it might be probable to extend the fee zone to the entire municipal border of Copenhagen. And when we do another cost-benefit analysis, this time where we let the fee zone be the entire municipality of Copenhagen, we find that it is profitable to extend this fee zone. And we find that the break-even point is between 5 and 10%. So in other words, we need to achieve a drop in the traffic flow between 5 and 10% in order to reach a socially profitable situation. Next slide. So now we've seen that it's profitable to introduce a tolling scheme in the city of Copenhagen, and it's also profitable to extend the border to the entire municipality of Copenhagen. But in both cases, it's still crucial that we reach this sufficient decrease in the traffic flow in order to reach this welfare gain. And therefore, we have the following adjustments made to the proposed tolling scheme by the municipality of Copenhagen.
So the two adjustments that we've chosen are variation-based. The first one being variation in time of the day that the car enters the towing zone. And this we had data from Singapore where we saw that they had great success with implementing this kind of time of day variation. They saw that their traffic dropped even further. At first they had a flat fee, and afterwards they used the variation in time of the day based fee. So this is likely due to less congestion during busy periods, rush hours in the morning or rush hours in the afternoon. And therefore, the traffic flow will become more efficient when the cars are spread out. The other adjustments that we've chosen is that the fee should be depending on the type of car. This creates an incentive for the consumer to buy more electric vehicles because we want to make electric vehicles, they can go through the border, they can go through the tolling zone for free. And thereby we will be incentivizing the consumer to buy more green cars. And therefore we are contributing to the green transition in the city of Copenhagen.
And you might wonder, why do we need to extend the border? Why do we need all these small variations in time and in car types and so on? And it's simple. We need to enhance the chances that this will be a success, that we can increase the citizens' welfare. This is actually our goal, is not to increase tax revenue, it is to increase the citizens' welfare. And it's also very important to consider that we have a few critique points of our welfare analysis, which we made an oversimplified assumption, and that is there's a linear correlation between the fewer cars and the negative externalities. However, this is very likely false. This is not linear, it will very likely be diminishing. So the more and more cars we remove, the small gain will gain welfare. In our oversimplified analysis, we can actually just remove every single car and will make everything better. But that's not true. That's not the case. And so this, because there's a diminishing return in welfare, that actually means we need a bigger drop in the cars than previously stated from Andreas and Nikolai. And we also have to take into account that there can be several other negative factors when implementing a tolling scheme. For instance, there could be an increasing gap between the poor and the rich as there will be relatively high cost for the poor people. Another minor problem would be that there could be fewer tourists from Malmö and the rest of Denmark, as it would be more difficult to enter Denmark. And a more serious problem is that if we just have the tolling scheme in the inner Copenhagen, we would just push the problem away to other areas of Copenhagen, such as Nørrebro or Frederiksberg or other places of Copenhagen. And that's not how we're going to solve it. This is not going to solve anything. It's just going to push the problem away. And therefore, it will also be smarter to extend the border, because then we could distribute this traffic jam in an even greater area. And we have also been looking at an alternative solution, and that is the kilometer-based pricing scheme. However, we do not believe that this is sufficient, because there will be it will be more difficult to implement, and therefore will also be higher administrative costs, and of course it will also be much easier to fraud. Therefore, we do not believe this solution is efficient in any kind of way. We believe that we have to stay with our tolling scheme solution and try to make these small adjustments, as this would be the most profitable social solution.
Next slide. If we impose this car and time-based toll, we believe that it will create a greater Copenhagen in many ways. The first one being a greener Copenhagen. This is especially important right now due to our goals for 2030 of cutting emissions by 30% in the European Union. This will happen as we will have less cars on the streets, as it becomes more expensive to have cars in Copenhagen and to drive cars therein. Furthermore, also be a greener Copenhagen because we will incentivize people to have greener cars and hybrid cars instead of these gas and diesel cars, which pollute in Copenhagen. Secondly, we believe that our implementation could create more time for the people in Copenhagen and the people visiting. This will happen because people can get from point A to point B faster as there will be less congestion. It will also help the public transport, the people on bikes and the people who are walking, as they will have less congestion and will have to wait for less cars. This will help result in a more flexible and efficient workforce, as they can get to their job, they can get to different customers more easily and faster, and it will also help people use their spare time in a way which they enjoy instead of being stuck in traffic. Lastly, it will have improved welfare benefits for the people. This will happen due to less air, less noise, and less light pollution in Copenhagen, which will overall result in a more pleasant city to live and visit. This will also be very important due to the improvements throughout Europe on other big cities, which we'll have to compete with. As you can see, a drop of 10% in traveling will cost us some money, since we won't get the 25 krona revenue per person arriving into the city. However, because of the internalization of the externalities and the improved welfare gain, we still believe that the population of Copenhagen could gain from this. We hope that you enjoyed our presentation, and if you have any questions regarding our analysis, our presentation, or our result, you're very welcome to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you guys for your presentation and for the jury.
Well, thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of feedback from someone. Well, it's probably from you guys. Anyway, what do you think that a pandemic like the current corona one would do to people's transportation habits? Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. You shut off the mic.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, maybe you should turn off because there's a lot of feedback.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Okay. So first of all, we.
Sorry. I'll just.
That's okay.
Finish the question. I'm not sure if it actually came. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So thanks for the presentation. No, my question was concerning the current corona pandemic. What you think that would do to people's transportation habits and how that might affect your business case?
So the main thing that we considered regarding coronavirus was that we think that people will shift from working at home, from working at the office to working at home. So there are definitely long-term permanent effects of this, and therefore we think that the amount of people that needs transportation by car or by bus or by S-train will decrease. So yeah, that's the main effect that we thought about regarding coronavirus.
Yeah. And also, if we implement this funding scheme, we will basically force some people to change to other places to, for instance, public transportation. And because so many people is going to stay at home, the pressure on the public transportation system is not going to be as big as perhaps we have thought a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for a very good presentation. I have a question regarding the assumption based on the Stockholm case. So how much will a tolling scheme reduce the amount of cars driving in the city? So the Swedish and the Danish general car tax models are very different. So it's a lot more expensive to own a car in Denmark than in Sweden. How would you think, if at all, this would affect the Danish or the Copenhageners' price sensitivity?
Well, we think that due to them already paying quite a high license pay for getting the car, they might be less incentivized by getting a smaller price or smaller cost by entering the city. So they might be ready to pay for this pollution. But this will, however, be usable to maybe create more bike lanes or create parks and help create a greener Copenhagen overall, since we can use the taxation for other greener benefits.
Okay, I have another question. Thanks. So you have noticed, talked about that this toll will come on top of taxation of cars that's already pretty high in Denmark. But then you suggest that the system penalizes carbon emissions, especially. But we already have taxes that do that at the national level. And that's sort of a general thing. So how do you think, so what do you have to say about the interaction of regulation at the national level and at the municipal level?
This taxation will, of course, have a positive effect, but it's not the only reason that we have this taxation to decrease the emissions. We also have to reduce the noise pollution and make fewer traffic jams and stuff like that. So that is just one benefit from this, that we will decrease in CO2 emission, and that is also very important, but it's not the only positive externality from this solution.
Also, we have the 2030 goals in Europe, where we need to cut emission by 30%, and currently they've derived all the cuts in the emission from techniques and improved technicalities, whereas we think that we need to cut it even further, which could be due to a cut in the municipal level. Also, Copenhagen is the biggest emission in Denmark currently, so I think it makes sense to kind of focus where it's important.
Yes. I think time is up. And I get the word to Ben.
Yes, the third and final finalist of PCC Rise case competition 2021 is Mi Case is Su Case.
Yeah. Hi everyone, we are Mi Case is Su Case. My name is Mads, this is Laura, this is Esben, and this is Yannick. And we're here to advise you on the effects of implementing a tolling scheme in Copenhagen. Next slide, please. Okay, so to start this off, you all probably know that 10 years ago in 2011, the Danish government actually tried to implement a tolling scheme in the first case. However, in that case, the public was not really convinced that it was a good idea, and therefore it was never carried out. Yet, here we are standing in 2021, and the problem is still present. Congestion is a major issue for Copenhagen right now. Therefore, we propose to implement a tolling scheme, but we also propose to make some modifications to the tolling scheme. Specifically, we want to add an additional zone and a time-varying fee. The impact of implementing this tolling scheme will be a positive socioeconomic impact with more than 500 million Danish crowns every year. This is due to a traffic reduction of more than 20% in the area affected by these tolling zones. Now, I will let Laura get you started in the underlying analysis. Take the floor, please.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as Mads said, the excessive number of cars in Copenhagen causing congestion is a major problem, and it will increase further during the next years. If we dive into the figure on the slide, we see that all means of transportation in Copenhagen will increase over the next coming years. By 2025, bikes will be the most popular way of transportation in Copenhagen. By 2030, public transport will account for almost 1/3 of all transportation in Copenhagen. So we're going in the right direction. However, we still face a major problem with the number of cars in the city. By 2030, the number of cars in Copenhagen will have increased by 22%. This corresponds to the number of cars per inhabitant to increase from 1/5 to 1/4. So the increasing number of cars causes a greater demand for roads in Copenhagen. However, the supply of roads in Copenhagen is fixed, and this is why the problem of congestion will be even more severe just in a few couple of years from now.
So this really calls for an action. Next slide, please.
Yes, this really calls for an action. Let's start by looking at the proposed tolling scheme by the Finance Administration of the City of Copenhagen. We find that the proposed tolling scheme reduced traffic in the fee zone by 9.4%, but congestion would likely move to other parts of Copenhagen. Yes, the proposed scheme was a flat fee of 25 Danish kroner per passage in and out of the fee zone, and the fee zone was located in center Copenhagen. By assuming that the effect of the proposed scheme is the same as the effect was in London, we can compute the effect of the proposed scheme. We find that the effect is that the number of vehicles in the fee zone will be reduced by 9.4%. This is corresponding to 23,000 vehicles per day. Yes, and as said, we made some assumptions, and we think that it's reasonable that we can use the effect in London to calculate this effect, since the fee in London also was a flat fee covering the inner city of London. However, there are some issues with the scheme proposed by the Finance Administration. First, the scheme will move traffic out of the fee zone to the area just outside the fee zone. This is of course due to people choosing alternative routes or parking spots in order to avoid paying the fee. And this is actually a serious issue because just outside the proposed fee zone, there live a lot of people in this area called Brokvartererne in Danish, Østerbro, Vesterbro, and so on. So yes, this is actually a serious issue. Moreover, 9.4% is actually a relatively low number compared to the effects in respectively 25% in Stockholm and 18% in London. Thus, there is room for improvement, and we need to consider an alternative tolling scheme. Next slide, please. Yes, we propose a modified tolling scheme consisting of 2 fee zones and a time-varying fee. The map on the slide illustrates the 2 fee zones we propose. So we propose, and as you can see on the slide, we propose in the red zone, we have a fee zone covering inner Copenhagen, and the blue zone is covering outer Copenhagen. The red zone is actually the one proposed by the Finance Administration, while the blue zone is the new one we came up with. The new zone is following the new metro Cityringen, thereby covering a larger area. And both of these fee zones will have a variable fee going from 0 to 25 Danish kroner. As you can see, there's a small typo on the slide. It says 12.5. It should, of course, be 25. And these are based on real-time congestion, such that when congestion is high, prices will also be high. And now Yannick will take you through some of the advantages of our modified scheme.
Yeah, so as Esben mentioned on the previous slides, then implementing only one zone surrounding the inner city would result in traffic chaos just around the inner fee zone. However, by adding another zone in the outer Copenhagen, following the Cityringen, you would reduce the incentive to park just right outside the inner fee zone, since people will still have to pay the fee of crossing the outer zone. Therefore, the congestion surrounding the inner free zone would be reduced. Furthermore, we want to implement a variable fee because it matches pendlers' willingness to pay for crossing a fee zone. So individuals with a high willingness to pay would be willing to pay a high fee in rush hours, and furthermore, individuals with a low willingness to pay would like to pay a lower amount in periods where there isn't rush hour. This has the benefit that it both maximizes the revenue of the tolling scheme, and furthermore, it enables individuals with a low willingness to pay to still be able to cross the borders, which might be a problem with a flat fee. However, in order for the tolling scheme to be effective, it is crucial that there is a high substitution of vehicles to other means of transportation. We believe that in our fee zones, there is a high degree of high possibility of substitution because there in these zones are comprehensive public infrastructure, especially around the outer city ring surrounding in Cityringen. There is a high possibility of substituting from vehicles to the metro. Yeah, so on the next slide, I'll try to dig into some of the numbers about making such a tolling scheme. So we find that a modified tolling scheme will reduce traffic in the fee zone by 23%, which corresponds to around 79,000 vehicles. So the effect can be divided into 2 groups. First of all, we can calculate the effect of introducing a variable fee zone as opposed to having no fee zone, And we can also calculate the effect of extending the tolling scheme with an additional zone. So first of all, by imposing that there is a 10% reduction in number of vehicles by going from a flat fee to a variable fee, which is based on data from Singapore, and by calculating the average of people crossing the outer Copenhagen zone, which corresponds to around 408,000 vehicles, we find that introducing a variable fee as opposed to no fee would reduce the number of vehicles with around 14.2%, which corresponds to 58,000 vehicles a day. Yeah, as I mentioned, there's also an effect of an additional zone surrounding the outer Copenhagen. However, surrounding the inner Copenhagen. So we have that the vehicles crossing the inner Copenhagen only consist of 60% of the vehicles crossing the outer Copenhagen. Therefore, we have to take this into account when we're calculating the additional zone. So by applying this theory, we have that extending with an additional zone will reduce the number of vehicles with 8.5%, which corresponds to around 21,000 vehicles. So in order to summarize on the figures to the right, we find that introducing a variable fee as opposed to no fee would reduce the number of vehicles by 14.2%. We find that extending our tolling scheme with an additional zone would reduce the number of vehicles with 8.5%. And in total, our modified tolling scheme would reduce the number of vehicles with 23%, which corresponds to around 79,000 vehicles a day. Next, I'll give the word to Mads that will talk about the socioeconomic consequence.
Thank you, yeah. Okay, so next slide. So in the end, what we all really care about is maximizing the well-being of the people who live in Copenhagen, work in Copenhagen, and just use Copenhagen in general. Therefore, it's extremely important to look at the socioeconomic consequences of implementing a tolling scheme. And what we find is that the modified tolling scheme actually has a beneficial effect on the well-being of the citizens of Copenhagen. Specifically, it will generate more than 500 million Danish crowns in socioeconomic impact every year. And furthermore, it has the extra effect of alleviating the congestion problem right outside central Copenhagen, which would otherwise be an issue with the original proposed scheme. An additional fact is that in isolation, the original proposed scheme actually have a net negative effect on the socioeconomic well-being of the citizens of Copenhagen. Actually, it reduced the welfare by more than 500 million crowns every year. And therefore, in isolation, we do not think it's a good idea to implement the proposed scheme, but the modified tolling scheme is preferable and a good idea to implement. And this is actually even though it is more expensive to operate and set up. Now, of course, we recognize that there are certain risks and adjustments that are possible to make the modified tolling scheme even better than what we have proposed here. And Laura will give you a brief look at some of the things that you could do to make this even better if you had to work more on it. Laura.
Thank you, Mads. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as Mads said, we have identified that our modified tolling scheme is prone to several risks. We have identified 3, and one of them is that our modified tolling scheme might cause more congestion and shortage of parking spots just outside the fee zones. One way to mitigate this is by creating new parking lots outside the fee zone, close to highways and central train stations, bus stops, and so on, in order to make substitution from cars to public transport even easier. Another risk by implementing the modified tolling scheme is that this tolling scheme intends to increase the demand of public transport, which might make public transport overcrowded. A way to solve this problem is by investing in new public transport, such as more bus lanes, more trains, and so on. This will not only solve this problem, but also be long-term benefits for the city of Copenhagen. The last risk that we have identified is that it might increase the inequality. However, we suggest a variable fee, which already will reduce this risk of happening significantly. Of course, our modified tolling scheme is not perfect, and of course, there can be made some adjustments to the tolling scheme. One is to exempt electric cars from the fee. This would give people an initiative to use green alternatives, which will reduce the air pollution. However, it will not reduce the number of cars inside the city as much as if you didn't exempt them. Another adjustment that could be made is by introducing more fee zones with different fees. In this way, it's easier to target the cars that drive the most inside the city, but it's a quite expensive system to establish. But this could also be done by using modern GPS technologies. So to sum it all up, we suggest a modified tolling scheme with 2 different fee zones, both with varying fees. This will ensure the overall well-being of the inhabitants of the city of Copenhagen.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And next, we turn to the questions.
Thanks for the presentation. Very interesting. I have a question. It seems you do talk about the people who drive cars as though they're all, private consumers, that they drive cars as a private thing. But many of the people who drive cars into the city will be people driving for either as part of their work or going to and from work. So what would it do to the model if you imagine that certain companies might actually choose to pay the fees for their employees in order to get them quicker into the city?
Yes, this is definitely a possibility. And this will, of course, not reduce the number of cars if they just choose to pay the fee in order to go inside the city. And it would also we have to take into consideration that if companies do so, the price of the product that the company sells might just get higher because they now see an extra cost. So of course, that's something to take into consideration. It's also an adjustment that could be made, that you exempt, working people on job using their cars, also such as taxis and so on.
So another question along the same lines is, do you think there might be an effect on the number of workplaces in central Copenhagen from such a fee?
Very good point. I think we've already discussed this, and I think actually an effect that could be both a pro and a con, depending on who you ask, would be that some workplaces might actually choose to locate themselves outside the fee zone. And of course, from the perspective of the city of Copenhagen, you would like to keep the workplace inside the municipality for tax purposes and also for growth purposes and so on. But I think from a broader and society-wide perspective, there would also be some good things to come out from workplaces considering other places to locate themselves, because the most convenient thing would just be to locate yourself right outside the fee zone, just 10 kilometers outside of central Copenhagen. But some workplaces might actually, it might start like kind of a trend in Denmark to look at some of the places that are actually cheaper to live in general. So I think that it might bring up some thoughts in many because of the public debate also. So people might start to think about the whole issue of locating a workplace in general, perhaps.
So a related question, if I may. So do you think that a toll ring or 2 toll rings in this case will lead to more sprawl or less sprawl?
So you could perhaps argue that since it's more attractive to perhaps move the business to just out of Copenhagen fee zone, than to move it to another municipality perhaps, then you could argue that this would actually mean that firms would move from the inner city fee zone to the out of the city fee zone. And this would, of course, still reduce some of the vehicles crossing the inner fee zone, but it would still be the taxes, for example, for the firms would still stay in Copenhagen, and therefore it wouldn't have necessarily a negative effect.
Hello guys, thank you for a very good presentation. I think it's quite impressive how much work you can do in only 6 hours. Really impressive. But if you had 6 more hours to improve your solution, how would you extend it? Or maybe put it in another round. Which of your assumptions do you think is the most critical ones? I know it's a question, but maybe I'm
okay, so just to answer one of them. Then if we had more time, we would like to look into a kilometer-based fee using GPS technology in order to tax the cars on how much they drive inside the city. There are also some issues about that there might be some problems with their surveillance and so on. So maybe you would answer the assumption.
Yeah, well, we have always have a lot of different assumptions. Maybe the most critical one is that going from a flat to a variable fee will increase the effect by 10%, which we took from Singapore. So maybe if we had more time, we would look more into that and how big the effect actually would be. Because in practice, it will increase the price since there are more people driving in busy hours.
Thank you to all three finalists for their presentations. Next, the jury will find the winner. But first, BCG will announce the winner of the best team name for PCC Rise 2021.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for the introduction, and I hope you all had a very great time solving the case, and it's impressive to see all the good answers. I mean, I can only recommend that you do such things. It's really a good experience, and it's very close to what we do in our daily work. So it's very nice to see. And as said from our friends in the PCC organization, we will now give the prize for the best name or the most creative name, and for that, Andreas will take the stage, presenting the winner.
Thank you, Kasper. It has been a tough choice, but when you see someone that is honoring a great legend, then you also have to honor them. So the team that we have chosen to get the award for best team name goes to Vitas Disciple. They have done a great job, but we also think that they did a great job with the names. So for each of one of you, we will sending you a Paul Rocher champagne, and you will receive that in your mail in the coming days. So congratulations, guys. So question from my side: how did you come up with the name?
I think it was Oliver's idea.
Yeah, so Vita is our lecturer in macroeconomics too, but so we found out that he's not going to lecture us because he's sick. So that's very unfortunate, and we just want to say that we hope that he's well soon.
Coming from we both went to the University of Copenhagen. We've also been taught by great minds, including him. So we support your decision, and we thought the name was brilliant. So congratulations, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kasper and Andreas. And now we will have a short break, and we will be back at 7:30 for the revival of the winner.
My name is Søren. I'm the CEO of the Finance Administration at the City of Copenhagen. We're proud to partner with PolitCase Competition, and we see this as a great opportunity to connect with you and to challenge you with an exciting real-life case from our city. We're responsible for managing the capital of Denmark, and that includes a lot of things: securing well-functioning infrastructure, securing great schools for our kids, sustainable economic growth, and securing a livable and green city.
I work as an economist at the City of Copenhagen's Finance Administration. My job is to carry out analysis that support the priorities of the City of Copenhagen and the political agenda of the City Council. Economists at the Finance Administration cover a broad range of topics, ranging from urbanization, infrastructure and mobility, to sustainability and green growth. I think the Rise competition is a great opportunity for you to put the skills you've been taught in your economic classes into practice and solve a real-life case about Copenhagen.
Bullet Case Competition Rise is a great opportunity to get to know the kind of projects you can be working with as an economist here at the City Hall. You can also gain valuable experience in teamwork and presentation. We look forward to meeting the economists of the future.
Thank you very much for 3 very good presentations. We've had a really good discussion in between the judges, and we've agreed on a first, second, and a third place. And maybe I should just mention short the prizes for the third, second, and first place. The third place will get 250 Danish kroner on gavekortet, and the second place will get 350 Danish kroner on gavekortet, and the first place will get 1,000 Danish kroner on academic books. So we've had a very good discussions among the judges, and in general, we've been extremely impressive. We've been extremely impressed that you managed to make this much work and get that deep into the analysis in 6 hours. So basically, just a congratulations to all of you for very, very nice job. On the third place, we will have a presentation by Nikolaj Obers Hold. Thank you very much for the presentation, guys. That means on it's now up between Vitas Disciple and Mika's suitcase. And the winner is a team that managed to come up with a lot of creativity in the solution and challenging the political proposed model. It's a team that on the analytical part has got really deep, at the same time as they managed to address the risks and come up with some mitigating actions to address those risks. And they've been clear about the cost-benefit analysis and the assumption of their work. At the same time, they manage a very clear presentation, to the point slides, and a very, very good recommendation. And the winner is Mika's suitcase. Congratulations. And the second place, of course, that's Vitas Disciple. Also a very good presentation.
Thank you, Thomas, and a big congratulations to Mika's suitcase. We were very impressed by your presentations as well as the jury's work.
We're happy that all of you chose to join us for this online event, and we want to say a big thank you to all jury members, our partners, and the organization.
Yeah, I think that's actually about it. We're very pleased that you chose to join in, and we hope to see you in week 39 for our next event, PCC Impact.
Have a great evening.